Good evening, Monkey. The date is August 13th, 2018. I just finished watching tonight's stream and I wanted to talk about Dankula turning himself in. First of all, the government does not win when someone goes to jail. It costs around £30,000 or $38,000 per person per year to sit in prison. That calculates to 19 grand for the potential 6-month sentence that was mentioned in the stream today. Not to mention the tremendous public backlash that would ensue if Count Dankula was sent to prison. If you think the backlash to Tommy Robinson was bad, consider that he actually broke a law that most people accept as a law. That is contempt of court. If Count Dankula goes to prison, it is because he is not willing to accept the decision of the court that found him guilty of a joke. No contempt, no substantial law, just the joke. Personally, I think the public backlash will be even worse. And what's more, the press won't be able to hold such a move against him. What can you say about a person who so firmly believes that a law is immoral that he will willingly go to prison over it? I mean, they'll try, but it's difficult to put a spin on the tactics used by Henry David Thoreau, MLK, and the whole civil rights movement as a form of civil disobedience. It would not be a win for the government to send him to jail, even if members of the government think it is. By the way, it's not a win for the government in any capacity to send Dankula to prison on the basis that sending anyone to prison is not a win for the government. It's much the same with any person who is sent to jail. It is viewed in the eyes of justice. Even if your view of justice is warped straight to hell, like in the UK, it would be an act of pure cynicism to say that a government's ability to put as many people in jail as possible, as opposed to finding the most just outcome for all individuals, would be any sort of signifier as to how much the government is winning. The courts ultimately can't say whether it has won or lost. It can only assume that it has done the best possible job in finding a just outcome. Although, in financial terms, I'd say that paying $19,000 to imprison someone as opposed to receiving an $800 fine is a definitive loss. Now that I have that out of the way, I think that the distinction to be made here that was made in the stream is one of symbolism versus pragmatism. In the most pragmatic sense, Monkey, you might be right. Count Dankula has a kid, he has a family, and of course, he has a dog of which to take care. It would be virtually impossible for him to take care of them from within a cell. Additionally, if he paid the fine, he could continue work on his activism on the outside, and that much is true. But people don't view an event like this in terms of the most pragmatic action, and that's where the symbolism comes in. No matter how much one claims the government is winning, turning yourself in and refusing to listen to a court mandate is viewed by many to be a display of defiance against the government, and that display is not worthless. The government says you must do something, and you don't do that thing. So then the government tells you that you must do that thing or you'll go to jail. So you don't do that thing and the police come to take you away. That's defiance, plain and simple. Granted, I think that the effort might be better displayed by sitting at home and waiting for the police to come and drag you off, but then again, he does have a kid, so, and it might be a little frightening to see your dad being dragged off in the paddy wagon, so perhaps turning himself in is the smarter move. If Dankula pays the fine, and that's the end of it, and that's the end of the cause, for him at least, and it dies there. Any activism he does from then on will be severely dampened by the fact that the cause that thrust him into the limelight in the first place is over. Right now, a $1,000 fine is considered a miscarriage of justice. A 6-month jail sentence, alternatively, is a potential public outrage bomb. And remember, the mob doesn't think in terms of pragmatism. They think in terms of symbolism. If he refuses to pay the fine, the symbol is that he defied the law. If he goes to jail, the symbol is that he went to jail for telling a joke. And if he does pay the fine, the symbol is that he succumbed to the force of government. Nobody ever said that civil disobedience is rational, because it's not. Rationality works at the individual level, and choosing to disobey an unjust law puts the individual in peril. Then again, if nobody ever chose to disobey the law, the civil rights movement wouldn't have happened, because the sit-ins that filled the jails would never have come to fruition. Slavery would never have happened, would never have ended, because nobody would have ever stood up to the norm. And if we're talking about people who choose to put themselves in peril at the terms of symbolism, nobody would ever fight in a war, because, let's be honest, there's great personal risk in the name of making very, very little difference on the battlefield. It's not much of a choice at all. I mean, would you call soldiers stupid because they're intentionally putting their lives at risk? Hell, I mean, they could stay at home and become a politician. Surely that would be a more effective way of enacting real-world change. And as for powerful symbolism, I can't think of any powerful symbols associated with people who risk their lives at great personal cost. I can't think of soldiers hoisting a flag on top of a muddy hill, for example. I also can't think of massive walls filled with the names of people who deliberately put their lives in danger at the greatest sacrifice. I can't even think of a tomb that sits in the sole purpose of remembering the sacrifices so in vain that nobody will even know you or that you ever died for a cause. Although I'm sure that Dankula's symbolic gesture will go completely lost on the world. After all, he's only liked by 300,000 people. And thank you for listening.